Good afternoon or morning, depending on where you're calling from, and welcome to today's webinar. My name is Derek Longmire, and I will serve as today's moderator. All attendees will be muted throughout the webinar. If you have any questions, please enter them into the questions field of your GoToWebinar navigation panel. Technical assistance questions will be answered in the order in which they are received, and program-specific questions will be queued until the question and answer portion of today's webinar. Should you have any technical difficulty, please contact the GoToWebinar helpline. That number is 800-263-6317. They will need to know the GoToWebinar ID to assist you, and today's webinar ID is 118-090-731. And one more time, that helpline number is 800-263-6317, and the webinar ID is 118-090-731. Drug-Free Action Alliance is a nonprofit organization with specialization in program development focused on strengthening community coalitions and enhancing environmental prevention. Drug-Free Action Alliance is based in Columbus, Ohio, with programming implemented in all 50 states, as well as U.S. territories and other countries. For community members unable to join us today, the session will be recorded. Additionally, as a follow-up, we will send a link to the recorded webinar, the PowerPoint slide, and a certificate of attendance and other related information that may come up in today's call. With us today is Tony Coder. He serves as the Assistant Director here at Drug-Free Action Alliance, and he has provided presentations related to marijuana throughout the United States and is a leading expert in marijuana trends and effective advocacy and policy strategy. Tony.
Thank you, Derek. Thank you so much for that kind introduction. Good afternoon to everybody here on the East and Central Time Zone, and good morning to everyone in the Mountain and Pacific Time Zones. So thank you so much for joining us today. We have quite a few people on this webinar, and so I'm hoping that we have some good learning opportunities, as well as a chance to look at. I'm not going to look so much at the health pieces of marijuana. I look at more of what it does to policy. What are the community concerns that we should have, as these are passed, and want to go straight into what laws are looking at across the country. And right now, there are 23 states and the District of Columbia that have medical marijuana programs right now. 12 of them have been voter initiative, which means that there has been a ballot, something put on the ballot, and folks have voted on it, and it has passed. 11 have been done by General Assembly or state government means. There are, in addition to that, there are some cities that have created some medical marijuana programs, as well as some recreational marijuana programs as well. It varies all over the place as far as the medicinal use of marijuana. Alaska has a 1 ounce limit or 6 plants, and Oregon has a, and this is for medicinal only, 24 ounce, 24 plant limit. There are also taxes that are considered, where 4 states actually have no tax on their medical marijuana program. Nevada has a high of an 8.1% tax on their medical marijuana program, and so it really does kind of vary all over the country. It seems like there really are 2 programs that are exactly alike. So if you are in states right next to each other, you could have completely different medical marijuana programs as you cross state lines and such. For recreational use, there are 4 states in the District of Columbia that have voted to legalize recreational use of marijuana. Colorado and Washington were the first 2. Alaska, Oregon, and D.C. kind of did, and I'll get to that in a minute, but Alaska and Oregon did to last November. Their systems are not up and running yet. The District of Columbia voted actually by a pretty wide margin to legalize recreational marijuana. However, the Congress basically shut it down once, since marijuana is federally illegal. They have kept it that way. And it was kind of an odd, program in D.C. anyway, which we'll get to in just a bit. And limits vary by state, which we'll take a look at as well. So that's a really quick overview about what is going on in the country as far as medical and recreational marijuana. This is a list of all of the 23 states and the District of Columbia. California was the first state to pass a medical marijuana law back in 1996. Again, we go back to none of these two states are the same. You have some really, really liberal laws and some laws that are really, really tightly regulated. So you kind of have it all over the board. Again, nothing concrete as far as going from one state to the next, and nothing that conforms one to the other. So it really is kind of where you're at, if you have medical marijuana, if you don't, and if you do, how that looks in your state. There's also something called a CBD state, which is cannabidiol, which these laws are passed for children usually with some kind of seizure issue. A lot of times it is it's for an epilepsy type of issue. These are children with extreme seizures, and 11 states right now have a CBD bill where children, families can actually get some kind of CBD oil. Some, again, we go back to whether it's restricted, not restricted, and it varies, again, across the board. So there's not a whole lot of conformity about how these are run from state to state. When we look at the CBD, and what is cannabidiol? Again, we go back to basically the children, young children with seizure issues, and there's a group out in Colorado, the Stanley brothers, who came up with something called Charlotte's Web. It's a strain of marijuana that is high cannabidiol, high CBD, and it was named for a little girl named Charlotte Figi who had epilepsy issues, and this seemed to help this young lady. There is also a drug that is actually through a pharmaceutical company, GW Pharmaceuticals. It's called Epidiolex, and it is actually in kind of the human testing phase. Right now it's part of the orphan drug law, and it has had mixed success from numbers that I have seen. There's a little more than half where the children actually have success by taking the Epidiolex. There are not confirmed stats on how many young children are helped with Charlotte's Web, how effective that is. I know that we've had families here in the Buckeye State where they've actually moved to Colorado trying to get Charlotte's Web, and it is not been successful. And the Epilepsy Foundation actually has issued a statement, said that there needs to be more testing, whether this is effective, what kind of patients this is effective for. So the cannabidiol is basically just for children who have these seizure disorders. Going on, how much can you possess legally as far as recreational marijuana? Take a real quick look at Colorado and Washington. Colorado kind of varies from patient to citizen. So citizens can't get as much as a non-patient. Also, those who just want it for recreational purposes can't get as much as a patient. They're a visitor and not to the states where they are also limited on the amount that they can buy. You have a 25% tax rate on recreational marijuana in Colorado, and 2 to 3% tax rate for medicinal marijuana. You can grow your own up to 3 plants. and a medical and recreational shop can actually share. There has to be a distinction, I guess, within the store, but they can actually share a building per se. In Washington, any person can have an ounce of marijuana, and there's also, it's set up like a three-tier system, like the three-tier alcohol system that many states have, and there's a 25% tax at each level, so there's, it's pretty heavily taxed. You can't give it away. You can't grow it, and there are fears by many in the medical marijuana community that the medical marijuana may actually disappear. So that it's set up entirely different from the Colorado system. And if we can go on to the next slide, there's also the states that just legalized it. Again, there will have to be rules written and all of these types of things. But what we do know is Alaska, you can grow 6 plants and have an ounce per person. And taxes are going to be $50 an ounce, and it will also be housed and regulated by the Alcohol Beverage Control Board. However, they have talked about, is this going to change and have to be controlled by a marijuana control board? So there are some rules that have to be thought of and considered there. Oregon, you can have 8 ounces. There will be marijuana dispensaries that are set up. An individual are allowed to gift it, but you can't sell it, so you can't have person-to-person sales. And again, it will be controlled by the Oregon Liquor Control Commission. And there's tax rates for flowers and leaves and immature plants. So you have a different tax system there. The District of Columbia, again, Congress did not allow this to go through. In the last federal budget bill, the Congress of the United States decided to keep it illegal in the District of Columbia. However, some with City Council are going to try to push ahead anyway. It's kind of a soft legalization anyway, that it would not legalize sales in the state. It would allow possession. And however, the District of Columbia City Council has talked about legalizing shops. So again, even you look at those three laws that were passed just a couple of months ago, and you can see how different each of them are compared to one another. These 3 groups seem to be driving this across the country, and just want to touch on them just very briefly. The Marijuana Policy Project, they look to change state laws, gain influence in Congress, and look for non-punitive, non-coercive marijuana policies. The National Organization to Reform Marijuana Laws is more of a, they seem to be more grassrootsy in their tactics, and they again want to make it safe, convenient, affordable. It says in their tagline there. And then there's the Drug Policy Alliance, which their policy initiatives are to actually legalize all drugs across the board. As it says right from their website, they work to ensure that the nation's drug policies no longer arrest, incarcerate, disenfranchises, and otherwise harm millions. So you have these 3 groups that are kind of driving a lot of the marijuana policy across the country, and they seem to be a lot of the money behind the campaigns that are happening in all of the states. Last night I was chatting with a state official, and we were talking about marijuana. And the one thing that, and I really, this is what I wanted this webinar to be. I didn't, some of you are going, most of you probably will hate me, which, I've been divorced before, so I've had that. However, some of you will probably think I'm liberal with this, and some of you will probably think I'm a prohibitionist. However, what I want to do with this webinar is kind of go with the questions that this state official asked me last night. His two questions, and I thought they were brilliant, and it made me really look at how we look at policy, marijuana policy. He said the two questions are this: do we want this for our community? Do we want this for our state? There are cities that are passing marijuana laws. Do we want this for our city? So that is one question that we have to consider. The second one I think we have to consider, no matter what side we lie on, if this happens, what does this look like? What are the policies surrounding this to protect public safety, to protect public health, to make sure that the regulations that are put in place are actually going to be beneficial to a community? So those two questions are really what I want to focus on in this. I'll do this through basically looking at what is going on in other states, namely Colorado, some Washington, some stories that we are seeing out of these two states, some stats that we're looking at, and then actually how the market looks, and what that does. Because the difference between decriminalization, that's a lot of questions that I get when I'm out and about, is what's the difference between decriminalization and legalization? Well, to put it as simply as I can, decriminalization is basically taking away punitive, put them in jail type of penalties. Legalization actually creates a market. It makes it legal because of the capitalistic society that we have. It creates a market. It creates a money source, and just like alcohol, it creates brands and marketing and all of these other types of things. Those, to make it as simple as possible, that's how I differentiate between the two of decriminalization and legalization. The number one group that I talk to around our state, in Ohio, and actually in the country as well, is the business community. What does it mean for business when we legalize marijuana? And some of the employer concerns that I'm hearing across the country are, what is our liability for injuries or damages caused by impaired employees? Impairment is hard to prove with marijuana. Alcohol is stored is water-based, so if you pee it out or sweat it out or whatever else, you can get rid of that. However, marijuana is fat-based, so what happens with marijuana is it's stored in your cells. So if you're a pretty chronic marijuana smoker, you're going to have that stored in your fat cells in your body. So even though you might not be impaired, if there's a certain guideline, a lot of times it's 5 nanograms, what happens is you can't get below that 5 nanogram. So not only are we looking at true impairment, if someone is impaired, then they shouldn't be on the job endangering other workers. However, at the same time, I think we need to be careful with because someone is over a line or a number, that they're punished for being impaired when they really aren't. It's just the way that marijuana is stored in the body. There's also a lot of compliance with state and federal workplace policies. If you are a business and you have an OSHA contract, or you are a part of DOT, the Department of Transportation, has been extremely strong on marijuana issues. That they have a zero tolerance policy, which truck drivers and those who operate heavy machinery and those types of things. Also, safety sensitive positions. If you're a federal and you get money from a federal contract, you cannot have marijuana in your workplace. So that really is confusing to a lot of folks, especially if maybe you get state contracts, you might get federal contracts, you might get private funds. How does that work within a place of business? Also, workers' compensation. Is marijuana something covered through workers' compensation, especially in a medical marijuana state? Can this be used as medicine. And a drug-free workplace environment. You have zero policy. How does this impact your drug-free workplace? You have a lot of confusion over that. Discrimination is another huge issue, and we'll talk about that a little bit more in the coming slides. Talking about hiring, disciplining, firing, pre-employment drug screenings. Does that, if you have a medical marijuana program in your state, how does that impact a pre-employment drug test where you're legal per se because of state law, and you're using it legally because you're a medical marijuana patient? However, your drug-free workplace policy does not allow it. So it's those types of things. And then when you bring up discrimination, well, you can't fire me because I'm a medical patient, almost dealing with some ADA guidelines. Then as well, guidelines for accommodations, leave requests, those types of things. So those are some of the employer concerns. And again, there's not a whole lot of answers when you talk about, and this is a very confusing topic for a lot of employers across the country, and employees, quite frankly. How do you actually deal with this, have a safe and productive workforce, and at the same time, deal with federal laws, which are in a lot of times in complete contrast to a state law. And in Colorado, there was a great story. Lee Bowman is the author, and if we can go to the next slide. From Scripps, this is from March 23rd of 14. One of the problems that was brought up in his article was there was confusion over the law. Courts have upheld rights, for the most part, to maintain a drug-free workplace. And Colorado Staffing Association's Executive Director Jan Harris said legalization for their members is a horrible dilemma because there's no way to know if someone's impaired. Now, I know that they're developing, it's in development, hopefully a tool where they can actually have almost a breath test or something that is more on the spot for marijuana impairment than what is currently out there right now. But you have these types of concerns that that employers have, and also according to the article, Colorado Motor Carriers Association, they actually tested right after legalization happened out there, which was January 1, and 15 of 100 tested positive for pot because of the confusion between federal and state law. So those are some things that employers really have to consider. And marijuana is a huge problem right now as far as the number of people who use it. And the more it's normalized, the more it's legalized in the United States, we can see that this number is going up. Quest Diagnostics does drug testing across the country, and they have seen positive marijuana results increase by 6.2% since 2011. And when you talk about the states of Colorado and Washington where they have legalized it, there have been double-digit increases. So, and there's even been in Colorado an estimate that about 415,000 pot users, marijuana users, are in the workforce. So how does a business make, again, their business safe, make it productive, and try to deal with federal versus state law concerns? And also, marijuana by far is the most frequently cited reason for positive tests. So you consider those types of things, and that's a map of kind of where the concentrates are across the country for marijuana positivity. And you can see that there's a lot of those red sections where people are using marijuana higher than in other parts of the state and parts of the country. Going back to discrimination, this has been, to me, the most concerns that I have gotten from employers. Discrimination, what does that mean? What does the language say? You have to read the language of the ballot initiative or of the General Assembly bill. And a lot of times it doesn't define what discrimination is. There have been court cases, I'm just going to talk about a few of them. In Michigan, a guy, Joseph Casillas, sued his employer. He worked for Walmart because of a flunked drug test. He said, you know what, I'm a medical marijuana card holder, had the card, legally according to their law, signed up, and the case was dismissed by the Sixth Circuit Court of Appeals because he lost. The court ruled that it was because it is a federally illegal drug that Walmart could then fire a person for that. In Maine, Brittany Thomas, Adecco. She was coming off of maternity leave, and again, she actually flunked a pre-employment drug screening. She sued for discrimination. Again, she was a medical marijuana card holder, and lost. The court proclaimed the same reason, that it's a federally illegal drug, so they could legally fire her. There is a case going on right now. It's actually in the Colorado Supreme Court. Brandon Coates worked for Dish Network, and he was a model employee. He was one who he is a quadriplegic, and he was using marijuana. According to Colorado law, he could use it. He was a medical marijuana patient, and they fired him because they're a drug-free workplace policy. He has lost his appeals, however, has taken it now to the Supreme Court, and that could really have implications for employers across the country, how that case turns out. The other consideration, that even if you win the court, you win the case, an employer, and according to the Wall Street Journal from August 15th of 2013, a lawsuit against an employer is going to cost them between $69,000 and $107,000 just in court costs. That doesn't include any award that might be given out. So when you're talking about small business especially, we're talking about Walmart, the Joseph Casillas and Dish Network. Those folks have, those businesses have $69,000 or $100,000 that, I'm sure that's not good for their stockholders, but they've got that. But you have a mom and pop organization, or you have a small business, then you're talking some pretty big money. And what is this going to do to whether this business stays open at all? And New Mexico had a very interesting case that the employer is still considering appealing. An employer, there was a gentleman who was who worked at a body shop in New Mexico, and he hurt his back on the job, and he wanted to use marijuana for his back problems. And he's a medical marijuana patient. The employer said no. This and the BWC, and the court actually ruled. The employee sued. And the court actually ruled that the employer must pay for the gentleman's marijuana as his medicine. So when you talk about those types of cases, and is now that employer violating federal law, which makes him or her a felon. So you have all of these things to consider, and again, it really is, to me, concerning for, again, these are the concerns I'm hearing from all over, all over the country from business. Colleges, another one that people don't take they think, oh my gosh, yeah, college kids will use weed and those types of things. But when you talk about how this is going to impact college retention, talk about how it's going to future employment and those types of things, that's another thing to think about. And what we're seeing now, and even the latest Monitoring the Future study, if we can go to the next slide, this is from the Washington Post, but the Monitoring the Future study showed the same, that basically, it's held steady. Young people who are using marijuana, the numbers haven't changed a whole lot. So the numbers are holding steady about how many young people are using marijuana. However, if you look at the next slide, and this is from the National Council of State Legislatures, you see that more kids are using in states that have medical marijuana laws, that's the states in red, than those who do not. And those are 12 to 17 young people who are past month marijuana users. We're hearing, that they're holding steady, but states where where it's been legalized have it looks like higher rates. So that's another consideration. And when you're talking about future college plans and going off and getting a higher education than high school, this is something that I think has to be considered. And what does it, why does it matter, especially for young people? Some people listening to this may think, you know what, I did a little pot when I was in high school or college, and I'm fine. I'm a professional. I've done good with my life. The things that they're showing now, especially Northwestern Medical Center at Northwestern University, we're starting to see brain shifts, especially in December of 13, Northwestern University started showing that with chronic use of marijuana, there were some brain abnormalities of individuals that they were studying. And especially someone with mental health history, a history in their family, there are some mental health issues tied to, according to this study, tied to chronic marijuana use. And the younger the drug abuse, the marijuana use started, the more abnormal the brain they showed. And then they came out a few months later, Northwestern University did, and they actually showed that even casual marijuana use can actually change the volume, shape, and density of gray matter in the brain. To where the author has said, I've developed a severe worry about whether we should be allowing anybody under the age of 30 to use pot unless they have a terminal illness and need it for pain. So you're talking about some brain issues, and science of marijuana is a lot of times behind the policies that are being set in place. So we talk about these young people who are starting to use it earlier. Is it causing them to is there a correlation between using marijuana and mental health issues or learning capacity and those types of things? And we then talk about those kids moving on to college and how is that affecting them and the impact on colleges. If we can go to the next slide. It is again a federally Schedule I drug, which could conflict with state law. I had a wonderful conversation with the University of San Francisco, and they're literally right across the street from the Haight-Asbury area, where there's quite a concentration of pot shops and things. And they said it was difficult for students to understand that off campus, if they were a medical marijuana card holder, they could use legally and those types of things. On campus, because, again, it's a federally illegal drug, they couldn't use it. It would endanger the federal funding that universities would receive, and the University of San Francisco, who I was talking to in particular. It also would endanger the federal financial aid that students receive. Again, not well known by college kids. They think, well, it's legal in my state, I can use it, and really, if a college or university is accepting federal funding, which the vast majority of colleges do, or if your students are receiving federal financial aid, those are considerations. You cannot have you cannot allow marijuana on your campus because it's a federally illegal drug. Also, NCAA considerations. You talk about the national championship game last night. You have Oregon, which has a legal medical marijuana program and a at this point, somewhat legal. The rules have not been set, and I don't think they've opened the markets yet. But you have a couple players suspended for the University of Oregon. And, being an Ohio State fan, I'm not saying anything bad about the Oregon Ducks. One of my best friends is actually a graduate of University of Oregon. However, you wonder if those students thought, is this something that is legal? And NCAA has come out and not allowed marijuana to be considered legal in their organization. And then you talk about off-campus use as well, especially if they're receiving federal financial aid. Again, questions that I think colleges have to kind of wrestle with. There was also a great study done by the the Maryland School of Public Health, and they followed 1,200 students over 10 years. And what they found was that college students skipped more classes, they earned lower grades, and dropped out more often if they were chronic marijuana users, not someone who smoked it, occasionally. These are chronic students, which means that if they smoke 15 times or more per month, which is once every other day, they were twice as likely to have experienced a discontinuous enrollment, which basically means there was a gap in their learning, there was a gap in their college career, which meant more money from whether it be student loans or mom and dad or however they're going to pay for that. And then once they got out of college, they had higher unemployment rates. Again, something else to consider as we look at legalization policies around the country. How does this impact college students? How do we make college students aware that even though it might be legal in whatever state that they might be going to college in, it's still illegal on a college campus. And then we go to the impact on the general community. And I'm going to kind of rush through these. A lot of these are folks who that deal with the traffic fatalities, and we're seeing more and more traffic fatalities as far as the number of folks who have marijuana in their system. In 2007 in Colorado, and this is according to the Colorado HIDA report, there were about 7% in 2007 of operators who were involved in a traffic fatality that tested positive for marijuana, and by 2012 that number has more than doubled to 16%. So you're seeing, even though, and what's interesting is that even though traffic fatalities, traffic crashes are going down overall in Colorado, those traffic fatalities where the person has marijuana in his or her system actually has doubled in Colorado. If we and that just kind of from the HIDA report, that chart there. So if we want to go to the next slide. Yeah, we'll go to the next one. Sorry. And that just kind of shows that there is a number of crashes that have dropped. Again, we go back to how many of the numbers where the person has marijuana in his or her system actually has increased as well. So if we want to go to the next slide. And what really is kind of scary to me, and because I have a 16 and a 19-year-old, is the teen drivers. Teen drivers, they think that marijuana doesn't impact their driving abilities. And according to Students Against Destructive Decisions with Liberty Mutual, they did a survey and about 19% admitted to driving after smoking marijuana. And of those young people, 36% said that there was no distraction. What's even scarier, to me anyway, again with teenagers myself, is a little over a third of them said that it made them a better driver after they smoked marijuana, which is just a little bit troubling to me. So as we think about that, that's another consideration. What kind of messages are we giving to our young people in regards to driving and marijuana use? What are they hearing out there? So we need to consider that. Some other, if we want to go the next slide, go the one after, I'm running out of time. Sorry about that. There's also another community concern is, and these have just been brought to light the last few months, is the homeless influx into Denver. Homeless shelters are claiming that there's an increase because of medicinal legal pot. Older people, older homeless folks are moving out there for the medicinal reasons, according to some of the homeless shelters. And the younger people are moving there for recreational purposes. The Salvation Army Crossroads Shelter said their survey, or they're estimating that about 30% of the homeless population they serve relocated for marijuana. The St. Francis Center said there's about 300 new faces per month, and Urban Peak, which is another homeless organization that helps homeless folk, said that their youth-oriented homeless program are up about 325 homeless young adults, which are about 18 to 25-year-old, and about a third of those folks in their program now cite legal marijuana for moving to Denver. So you also have to think about working for the social service system before this position. You have to consider how it impacts Medicaid, how it impacts social services, how it impacts food banks, how it impacts homeless shelters. All of those types of things that are safety nets for individuals in a community. Is marijuana making things a little more than what was before? Is it impacting these social service and safety net organizations, which then leads us into taxes? Well, shouldn't the taxes pay for this? We're going to get a boon in taxes. Colorado, when they first legalized marijuana, the governor's office said there'd be about $100 million in taxes that would be brought in. Colorado economists were a little bit more realistic and said, well, we'll get about $67 million estimated in the first year. And since then, they have actually revised it to about $58.7 million that they think they will get the first year. Tourists are accounting for a lot of folks in the resort town, and actually 50% of all sales in Denver. So it's a tourist industry. So it is bringing tourists into Colorado's resort towns and mountain ski lodges and those types of things. And excuse me. And there is marijuana industries that they claim that 16,000 people are licensed to work in the marijuana industry in Colorado. However, when we look at again the taxes and how taxes are devised and those types of things, when you're talking about a 25% tax, and I don't know what other tax as far as on a good that you have, whether it be alcohol, whether it be cigarettes, whether whatever it may be. Having a 25% tax is a really, really big tax. So they're estimating that about 40% of all the marijuana that is in Colorado is still sold on the black market. So you're not, you're not knocking out a black market, and it just seems to make it a little harder for law enforcement on doing their jobs. And again, we go into public safety. ER visits, another thing that we have to consider, especially young children, when you talk about the issues, especially related to edibles and young people getting into edibles and those types of things. How do you manage that? How do you regulate that market, that edible market? And we've seen increases in Colorado in the past few years as well. And then what is interesting, and I just find this interesting, it really doesn't have it to do with anything other than there is an ailment called cannabinoid hyperemesis syndrome, which was identified in 2009 by a group of doctors. And it has happened when young people start using marijuana. If we want to go to the next slide, if we want to they use marijuana for years and on a weekly basis, and they began very young, usually before the age of 15. What doctors have been finding, and have actually named this syndrome, there are symptoms. It's not going to threaten your life, and you're not going to overdose or anything like that, but the symptoms are there's severe nausea, severe vomiting, and it's cycle vomiting over a few months, and you seem to have an abdominal pain, kind of a colic is what they describe it as. The short-term fix, interestingly enough, is if you get put in hot water, it takes the symptoms away. But the long-term fix has to be where you quit cannabis, you quit marijuana use. But I just thought that was kind of interesting. And again, we go back to what legalization is versus decriminalization. Excuse me. And we've seen this even in the medical state. It's not just smoking. We think of marijuana as smoking, like maybe some folks did in college or high school or whatever. But it isn't smoking. There's a full line of edibles out there. You're talking lollipops. You're talking candy bars. We have to consider how do you regulate that market? It even is for dabbing. There's something called dabbing and waxing. I call this dabbing, waxing, and juju joints. What is dabbing? In the left, in almost the middle of the screen is a picture of marijuana wax. And what happens is you actually create that from marijuana hash oil, and it's done through butane, kind of a highly explosive gas that you use because you have to cook it. So then what happens is you get the wax, and then you melt the wax down into what's called dab. It's kind of a marijuana lab. You take it back to kind of the marijuana meth labs, or I'm sorry, the meth labs of the mid-2000s and late 1990s, and it's those types of labs where you're melting, you're kind of melting things down. You take the wax, and then you use butane oil again to make it into a vapor, and you smoke it in a vape pen. And vape and wax is usually about 4 to 5 times stronger than marijuana. And juju joints is actually a legal brand in Washington that is actually prepackaged with marijuana in it. Usually about 200 milligrams, 100 milligrams of THC. But you get 150 puffs. So you're only expected to use 150 a puff per however that electronic cigarette type thing works, and it really jacks you up, which is kind of why I have that help. I'm dabbed and I can't get out, or I can't get up. It's not meant as a joke. That's actually meant as some of the things that thank you that are actually going on. Even to the editor of High Times magazine has talked about his issue with dabbing, and this is a guy who has used marijuana for 50 years. So, and then you talk about the explosions that are happening, the labs. Again, something that law enforcement really have to pay attention to because of the butane that is being used. Again, we go back to kind of the things. These are actually illegal products. I just think they're kind of funny. Nugtella instead of Nutella, which is hazelnut spread with medical marijuana. These have all been seized for copyright infringements. But these are also products that, as you look at them, again, the Pop-Tarts or the Dank Bar kind of looks like Mr. Goodbar, and Hershey's suing that company, Tincture Limited, for copyright infringement. So that's another thing that we kind of have to look at. They look an awful lot like real products that kids might be able to use, and it can be dangerous, which brings us to our next slide, which is again, the edibles, you can have up to about 70% THC. There are some limits now, but what the Denver Post found in their story of March 9th is that testing showed that labels didn't actually match the THC level. So sometimes, if it said 10% THC, you could get 3%, you could get 30%. So it wasn't real uniform on how they were measured and put into packages. And one of the examples that I use in my talks is a guy named Claude. It's not a guy. It's a candy named Claude, who's a black cherry gummy bear, and he's he's marijuana infused. And the picture here has it next to a dime, so you can see it's not one of these uber gummy bears. And they actually have 100 milligrams of THC per bear. Colorado law says that you should have 10 milligrams per serving. That's a safe serving size, so it doesn't create some hallucinogenic issues and some psychotic episodes that some folks have had. So you can see that, and they're doing a better job of this, because right now a foot's a serving. It used to come in 10 bears per bag. However, the recent labeling issues and some of the issues dealing with some of these edibles, they actually have to be split into 10 milligram servings, and they can't have more than 100 milligrams of THC per bag or per package. So you can't have 10 bears in this little bag like you used to. You can get one bear, and it would be split, so it's a little more uniform. The problem is with these edibles is the way that they are metabolized into your system, and that's what happened to this young man, Levi Tombapongi. He was a Kenyan student who came to Northwest College in Wyoming, and he had he and some friends decided to go down to Colorado, buy a marijuana cookie. The gentleman at the pot shop told him, do not, it's a 70 milligram cookie, but do not eat the whole cookie. Only eat a sixth of it. You can have a sixth and you'll be okay. And I guess he was reminded, do not eat more than the recommended dosage. Well, what happens, the way that these edibles are metabolized, is it takes somewhere between 60 to 90 minutes to actually be metabolized into your system. And kids that I know don't like waiting for that long to feel the effect of something. My kid can't even wait for me to get hamburger helper off the stove. So what happened was this young man ate the whole cookie. Well, he started having hallucinogenic episodes. He started talking to the lamp and to different things. He started talking he said he was talking to God, and he ended up running out and jumping out of a window and accidentally killing himself. And the autopsy said that marijuana intoxication was a significant contributing factor. So this is another concern that we have to have with young people and actually with adults. Christine Kirk, I actually had a chance to meet friends and family at an event I was doing not too long ago. And they thanked me for telling her story. Her husband ate a marijuana candy, and he started hallucinating and saying that, you need to, shoot me before I shoot you. I'm going to kill you if you don't kill me, type of thing. And as she was on the phone with 911, he actually, about 7 minutes in, took the gun and shot and killed her. So this even affects adults. Not just young people, not just college age. This is something that a lot of people don't understand the dangers, especially with these edibles. So this is another consideration. We talk about policy. How do we control these factors? How do we control these types of edibles and the market that accompanies legalization in our states and in our country? So this is about 55 minutes of a very much larger issue. I tried to go over touch on subjects and give a little bit of an explanation. But I guess my primary consideration and the reason we're doing this goes back to those two questions. Is this something that we want to do for our community? there's something we want to do in our state, and if it ends up happening, how do we make sure that this is safe? How do we make sure that we are doing the best policy work to protect the people, to protect young people, to ensure public safety, employer and employee safety, all of those types of things. So I am so thankful that you were able to join today. We are actually having a marijuana advocacy and policy summit. I don't know if Derek wants to talk about that for a second. He's organizing this in our office.
Absolutely. Thank you, Tony. Hopefully, if you registered for the webinar and received our email promoting it, then you've also received communications related to the Marijuana Advocacy and Policy Summit. If you haven't received our communications previously and have just signed up, those will start coming to you. But we're having a Marijuana Advocacy and Policy Summit with a pre-conference on March 31st that will focus on college or higher education and law enforcement. And then the summit itself will be April 1st and April 2nd. April 1st will really look at the science behind marijuana, some of the trends that we're seeing in other states. And then April 2nd will focus on advocacy and policy. So we are speaking with a like mind and are able to communicate the reasons as to why to either maintain keeping marijuana illegal or to turn back the times on some of these things. The cost for the conference is $159 for the pre-conference. However, if you register by the end of this month, that'll be only $99. And the summit for April 1st and 2nd is $299, or only $199 if you register by the end of this month. And it'll be held here in Columbus, Ohio. And additional information, as well as the opportunity to submit your application to attend, is available at drugfreeactionalliance.org/maps. Tony, do you want to talk a little bit about the resources that we have on our website?
Absolutely. Thanks, Derek. That is good that you know so much more about the conference than I do, so thank you so much. Yeah, we actually have marijuana resources on our website. Just go to drugfreeactionalliance.org/marijuana. What other states are seeing, we have a marijuana quiz that some classes, some teachers and some organizations have used, just to and it's all research-based. It isn't opinion-based and those types of things. And those are cited answers and things like that. There are also some association and organization concerns. So, you know, when you talk about medical marijuana, you're talking about you know, what does the AMA think about that, the American Medical Association? What does the Glaucoma Society think about that? What does the Epilepsy Foundation? Those, we actually have their statements from their websites on our site as well. So I encourage you to look at that. And then other kind of resources, stories around the country, what is going on, and then other kinds of resources. So I really do encourage you to take a look at that. And it has been such an honor to present this to you today. I know I see lots and lots of questions, and actually we'll be we've got just a couple minutes, and we will take a list of questions and try to answer those as well as possible. If you have any other questions or those types of things, Derek shared that we've recorded this webinar, so if you want to listen again or those types of things, that will also be on our website. So you know, I encourage you to listen to it again. Share it with you know, your staff if you'd like to, and we'll try to get to all the questions that are out there. But I do thank you so much for being with us today, and we are just hopeful that states, communities, cities all create a policy that is best for their community and for public safety, public welfare, and all those that live and work and play in the community. Thanks so much.
Thank you, everyone. like with our other program webinars, there will be a survey post-call. Please take that and give us your feedback as to what would be most effective in hearing for the future, what takeaways do we have for today, and what are some other things that we can work on assisting you with. In addition to that, I wanted to remind you of our upcoming webinar. It will be Making the Case for Prevention. We have a lot of talk and are often having to continually fight that uphill battle that prevention is something that's important. And when we look at prevention, it's just the word itself is kind of a no message, but prevention really is being proactive and not reactive, and that's really what the presentation will be about. So that will be on February 17th from 1 to 2 p.m. Eastern Time, and you can schedule that at drugfreeactionalliance.org/upcoming-events. And we've now reached our question section today. There are many questions that are coming in, so if we're not able to get to you, please feel free to contact Tony. His webinar or his information will be coming on the screen shortly. And the first question we have is related to CBD. And Tony, are you familiar with a CBD bill or policies that would be a good recommendation for marijuana or some of the other things that you've seen in other states?
One of the best bills that I have seen is actually in Georgia. They actually go through the University of Georgia, I think, Medical Center, and what they've done is it's more of a scientific process. The problem with some of the CBD non-regulated strains, the Charlotte's Web, you have some chances of contaminants and some of those other things. Plus, again, they aren't studied real well, so we don't know their effectiveness. Georgia has actually set up through this some children and families who actually get the CBD oil from GW Pharmaceuticals and are able to have this dispensed to their child and not only to help the child, but also to see if this is an effective means of managing their symptoms. So I would look to Georgia. Some other considerations. You may want to call GW Pharmaceuticals. Actually has that CBD kind of American helpline where you can, if you're a family with these types of issues, that you can apply to be part of the human study that they're doing for this. I guess as Drug Free Action Alliance, one of the things that we really want to encourage is if this is a public health issue, that we do this in the correct way. And actually, we advocate for more spots being in that human testing and orphan drug law. So to expand that as well, so more families can get use of this, and also to see if this is really an effective treatment.
Thank you, Tony. And we have a question from, and I've lost her name, Christy. And the question was to once again have the information for the folks who have lost their lives due to issues related to marijuana. This is just two examples of many, but the first we talked about was Levi from Wyoming College, and then the second was Christine Clark. So both of those will be coming onto your screen, or I'm sorry, Kirk. The next question is from Brenda, and her question is, I heard the federal ban on marijuana has been lifted. Is that true?
No, that's not true. There's a bill that was introduced actually the last Congress, where they were going. It was I think called the Marijuana Tax and Equity Act, and it has not been lifted. What has happened? There's two things. That bill did not pass. It would have legalized marijuana, and there would have been 50% tax put on marijuana. That did not pass. The other piece, the federal ban that you may be talking about, is what happened with that federal bill. State DEA are no longer longer allowed to use federal funds to enforce marijuana laws in medical and legal marijuana states. So there was it wasn't the ban was lifted, but federal money can't go to enforcing marijuana laws in medical and the recreational states.
And the next question is related to D.C. and Congress. What is the status for D.C. and how exactly does that work out with Congress and what they allow and disallow?
Congress did not allow marijuana to be legalized with the same bill that allowed that banned the DEA from enforcing marijuana laws, federal marijuana laws. It also put the halt on D.C. So their law that they passed is actually not valid. Again, it goes back. The D.C. City Council is going to somehow try to override that law, but Congress said that legalization there was a no-go. So they passed that, I think, in December, maybe late November of last year.
Thank you, and I'm sorry I forgot to mention that was from Georgiana. This question is from Xavier, and in looking at how marijuana has kind of started from each coast and have worked in, what are the chances that marijuana will be legalized in some of the southern states, such as Tennessee?
Actually, Tennessee has one of the most, a senator who really pushes marijuana legalization. He's one of the stronger, I'll have to get his name, but he is really one of the more vocal individuals who are pushing for the legalization of marijuana. I feel that no state is immune from this. So as this comes about, Florida did not pass medical marijuana, but it was, to me, they didn't pass it because of the majority. Actually, a majority of people voted for medical marijuana. However, the language down there to get something put into their constitution is 60% of the people have to vote for it, and 57% voted to legalize medicinal marijuana in Florida. Georgia, I have seen there's a medical marijuana bill that's being considered down there. Missouri is another. That is a really, really volatile state with this subject. So really, Tennessee, you've got some folks who are really pushing for it at the federal level. And it is just, again, how much the money comes in to support a campaign.
Thank you. And the next question is from Greg, and it's related to the CBD. And if a chronic user remains above the 5 nanogram level, how can we be certain they are not experiencing a constant state of some type of impairment?
Again, it goes back to the way that a marijuana impairment lasts between 4 and 6 hours. It's according to how strong the strain is that you're getting. So, I mean, you would have to be smoking it all the time. But again, it goes back to the way that marijuana is stored in a person's system. It will be stored. It's kind of like I need to work on my ho-hos. So like with me, it's a ho-ho. So it's kind of stored in there, and until I stop eating ho-hos, and this is an awful example, but if I stop eating ho-hos, then that's when I will get rid of my little pudge I've got here because of that. And it's the same kind of thing, for lack of a better example. It's the same type of thing. I may not get that sugar high or whatever I get from the ho-hos. And with marijuana, it'll only last about 4 to 6 hours. However, that is stored in your system. So, and really, we do need a better way of measuring impairment, and I really would love to see, and I know it's trying to be developed right now. There's a group out there trying to do it, but really we do need an impairment road test in this country, actually around the world.
Thank you. The next question comes from Anne-Marie, and you referenced the Quest diagnostic results, and were those based solely on workplace drug policy or drug testing, or were there other sources that were involved?
Quest Diagnostics only does workplace drug testing. So that was just workplace testing that is done. That's what Quest Diagnostics does around the country. So it was just workplace.
And this question is from Leslie along the same line of drug testing, and you referenced Colorado. And how are those drivers being tested for marijuana?
There is a 5 nanogram limit that is in place in Colorado. The legislature actually, once it passed the medical part, actually when dispensaries opened, Colorado passed legalization back in 2000. However, the problems didn't start arising until the dispensaries. That's when you started to see the numbers really start to get much higher as far as DUIDs, driving under the influence of drugs, and some of those other impairment and use issues. So it was really after those things opened, and that's when they passed the 5 nanogram limit, and that was up to the legislature. They're the ones that had to agree on it, and that's what happens in these states is the legislature has to make rules on what is marijuana impairment. And I've seen some states that have gone down to 2 nanograms, and other states most states are at 5, however. So it really was up to legislative decision.
And just a clarifying point for the PowerPoint, it said the Colorado Rocky Mountain HIDA report, and it said the Colorado Rocky Mountain report, and it's the Rocky Mountain HIDA report. So we'll make that correction before we send that out. And is there a limit on the number of edibles that a person could purchase? And are you familiar with any of those limits throughout the states? And that question comes from Christopher.
I don't know of any limits on edibles. What's interesting about Colorado is you can actually have your limit, get your 2 ounces or whatever it is, and you can actually make multiple visits daily. The issue is also, it goes back to policy. That is a fantastic question that you have there. Are there limits, or is it that you can buy 12 brownies and those types of things? So that is an important consideration. I don't know of any limits of how much you can actually go in and buy in a store, but that is a fantastic consideration when you're talking about legalization, and especially when you're talking about having kids in the home and those types of things. And even pets. Pet poisonings are up something like 400% in Colorado, where the dog gets into the marijuana, and it doesn't. There's only been a couple animals that have passed away, but usually it kind of sends them into a sluggish state and makes them vomit and those types of things. So it does impact pets as well.
And this question is from Jessica. Going back to the Liberty Mutual survey, do you know when that was conducted?
That was conducted in 2009.
And along with those lines, were there other large sources of information for the stats, or could those be provided to the PowerPoint before that they're sent out?
Absolutely. Yeah, I'll make sure that the PowerPoint has all the notations. Some of those are newspaper stories, and but I try to list those as well, the Scripps and Wall Street Journal and those types of things. So absolutely, I will list those where they've come from, whether it be Rocky Mountain HIDA or SAMHSA or whoever else.
And this question is for Rhonda that I'll go ahead and take care of, Tony. And her question is, I registered yesterday. Is that too late for the PowerPoint and recording? And the answer to that is no. It doesn't matter when you registered or how you registered. As long as you got a link to attend the presentation today, then you'll be listed in our list of folks that will be signed up to receive that information. So once we process the PowerPoint presentation, or I'm sorry, the recorded webinar, get that converted to our YouTube channel, we'll get that sent out, and that usually takes a couple days, so expect that no later than Friday. And for the next question is, what can you speak to some of the risks of cannabidol medications, especially for children with epilepsy?
Those are those, what was the question about the cannabidiol?
What are some of the challenges with epilepsy?
The challenges are just the number of seizures these young people are having. And talking about the science, it doesn't help all children. The numbers that I'm getting are about 54% of the actual children are helped. They're trying to figure out whether it's certain types of seizure activity. Some of the children are helped have seizures up to 150 times a day. So it just is it's almost according to what they really don't know. It's per child basis, and it helps like almost 1 out of every 2. So it really is something that GW Pharmaceuticals is studying, why this is going on, and the Epilepsy Foundation has actually asked for more testing and for more results before before they are able to support it. So, and quite frankly, I would never demonize a parent for trying to, with 3 kids of my own, I don't know what I would do. I would do everything in my power to try to help my child if they had this issue. And so, I mean, some of this is, it's kind of a last-ditch effort, and they're just trying to help their child. So you're giving kind of an unproven medicine, and quite frankly, we don't know what the long-term consequences of these medications are as well. So it might be helping some short-term symptoms, but we don't know what the medicine or these things do to kids, especially that take it on a long-term basis.
Thank you. And this question comes from Ruth. Thinking about the issues related to the edibles and all the challenges that we're seeing, wouldn't legalizing be a good argument for creating consistency of packaging and et cetera? And then there would be some national standards that the FDA can monitor.
Well, the FDA has been pretty strong. They're not going to take a to get this off of the Schedule 1 list, and they're not going to remove it from the federal ban. So one of the things that I think we should advocate for from a policy perspective is that there be some consistency. I agree with you. On your point that there needs to be consistency. There not only needs to be consistency with packaging of edibles, there needs to be education done about what edibles do. There needs to be, in my opinion, consistency about what marijuana laws look like. This patchwork system just seems to be confusing to an awful lot of folks, and we have to have to me, a real conversation about whether this is something good for society. But I agree 100% that we need some kind of consistency.
And Tony, I don't know if you know about this question or not, but this one comes from Libby, and her question is, where does Pennsylvania stand currently related to marijuana?
I have heard there are bills that are currently being considered in their General Assembly cycle. It is a state that has a couple of pretty vocal pro-marijuana legislators. So it all is according to whether that can be convinced of your governor, and and some of the legislative pieces, but I have heard, I know that there are some pro-marijuana legislators, and I'm pretty sure that Pennsylvania's had bills introduced in the past. It seems like last General Assembly there was a medical marijuana bill that people thought were going to pass, or there was a ballot initiative, but it is again whatever how we advocate for those types of things.
And the final question that we'll address today is, do you consider requests to travel to other states to prevent two agencies? And that question comes from Lisa.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, absolutely. You know, the one thing. Sorry. Oh no. Yeah. The one thing that we, I guess my opinion and Drug Free Action Alliance opinion is that we are kind of on this forefront of we have to have real conversations about this. And again, I've been to states where people hate my guts, and I went to a college recently where I got, in the beginning I got yelled at, but pretty heavily. However, as they found out that it wasn't just about prohibiting marijuana, but having an honest conversation, I think that works better. And that's what we try to do is in influencing policy. Let's have a conversation. What is best for society? What is best for public safety? And let us, we won't tell people how to think or do. However, we do think that having all opinions at the table is helpful in creating good public health policy.
Thank you. And on that note, we will thank you all for joining us today. Should you have additional questions for Tony, you can contact him at tcoder@drugfreeactionalliance.org or call here at 614-540-9985, extension 17. Again, it's going to take us a little while to get the recorded session converted over and send that out your way, but expect it by Friday. And should you have any other questions, feel free to contact us here at Drug Free Action Alliance. Thank you again so much for joining us, and hope you will join us again next month as we talk about being proactive and making the case for prevention. Have a wonderful day, and we'll talk to you next month.